All right, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Shield. I'm your host today, Jason Shropshire, Chief Operating Officer. And today I've got our good friend that we've known for quite a long time, Tony Bai, with us. He's currently Chief Solutions Officer at RISCPoint and has been for a few years now. But Tony, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're finally catching up somewhere other than at a conference or a after hours event at a conference.
Yep.
But yeah, it's always good to see you and to talk shop. I know you're opinionated, as are we, so it should be a great conversation. Tony had to tell us, just I'll try not to be on my soapbox too much, but that's cool. Well, first, Tony, give us a little bit of background on how you got into the cybersecurity space, and especially on this kind of federal cybersecurity side of things.
Yeah. So as you see in my background, I'm actually retired Air Force, and my first foray into cybersecurity was actually as a young airman at Ramstein Air Force Base or Air Base at my first duty assignment. So I was a computer programmer back then by training, trade school, and everything else. But towards the end of my tour in Germany, supporting USAFE headquarters, ended up doing project management. Part of that was dealing with intel related things. So it was always about how do we secure the data? How do we make sure it doesn't get uh, leaked to anywhere unintentionally and everything else? Because that's kind of where I cut my teeth around security in general. Information security was just dealing with classified information because, like any of us that have been in the military, I don't want to go to jail for saying the wrong thing to someone that's not cleared for it. So, um, and then I've hit it here and there throughout my career in the Air Force too. And what really put me on this path was I had an opportunity to get my master's degree at the Air Force Institute of Technology as an enlisted person. And the degree program I selected was actually cyber warfare operations. So my master's degree was in cyber warfare operations. Hit the right time for the sins of being a full-time master student in the Air Force. My next assignment was actually at the Pentagon, working for the operations directorate A3 at at the Pentagon, and the role that they put me in was to be the cybersecurity and cyber defense subject matter expert for headquarters Air Force. So if it had the word cyber in it, it came across my desk. I did my research and provided input and concerns around anything cyber. So part of that, I would help have input in where we were standing up Cybercom at the time and Air Force Cyber and all the command and controls and how all that stuff was looking, right? The stuff had been in place, but we was finally Cybercom became its own command and things really started accelerating. So that's where I cut my teeth in my last 5 years in service and just continued on after I retired and became the typical federal contractor when I retired out of the Pentagon. That's how I got my start. And Linus just was a falling into it, I guess, when I retired.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it sounds like you know, kind of the path that you came up is a little different than mine. I mean, I figure we're about the same age,
yeah.
but I came through engineering school in the late '90s, and then I was working at a machine design firm, and
Uh-huh.
they were their idea of security was like not having an internet connection, for the network. So I was their Novell administrator, and I sort of took over a lot of those things because I'd always tinkered with computers. My dad was an IBMer, so he was always bringing stuff home when we were little. Um, but yeah, I mean, they eventually wanted to start connecting to the internet, so we had to figure out the proper ways to do that and how to do it safely and that kind of stuff.
Oh
But
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of old school. Like for you and I and people our age that came up in IT, we had a hand in everything, right? Because you kind of mentioned Novell networking. My first duty assignment, we were help running all the FinNet around the
mhm.
office buildings and base to implement our Novell networking there, and doing all that and dealing with the old Sperry laptop Unix machines, which had just a little flip out with a 4-inch, monochrome monitor in there running Linux that was like 50 pounds, but it was portable. type thing. It's now all the old school stuff that we did, but and we all graduated to regular networking, system administration, and stuff like that, which I think at least for us, and obviously I'm probably biased with our generation and everything else, it gave us a very strong, broad foundation in computer operations and IT so that we can properly implement cybersecurity in a realistic and operational way. At least that's my thoughts.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I've seen that with just the students that we get. Some come up in these MIS programs out of college, some are in the CS programs. The MIS folks are make great consultants, right? And
Mhm.
but the fundamental understanding that we had to go through, like to actually plug stuff together and make it work, and deal with racking and stacking servers like I've done in my past. I mean, it's kind of a lost art these days. Like they don't appreciate that you can run Terraform and kind of accomplish what would take me, half a week in a 65-degree data center, to accomplish. So it's kind of amazing, and it's a bit astonishing that it's the things that are taken for granted.
I don't know if it's taken for granted, but it's just things have progressed so far where there's an appreciation for what we did, but truthfully, this is more of like a been there, done that. I mean, that experience
Oh,
helps
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, it's an experience that helps, I think, in an abstract way, but nothing in a concrete technological way of implementation of technology or anything like that, because it's so vast. I mean, I saw something on Reddit or something that I came across where engineering hacker was able to run Doom on a throwaway chip from a pregnancy test. Like the stick would have
Wow.
a little display, but they were able to
Yeah.
hack it so that it could literally run Doom, and you could play Doom on the little screen there. I mean, obviously it could be AI, but it's not out of the realm of possibility given like the tech that we have that is just disposable is way more advanced than what we had during the Apollo missions. I mean, just bringing the date with Artemis 2 landing and everything else. The IT technology we had back when we first went to the moon compared to now is just unbelievable, and we had
Yeah.
to keep up with that.
There's a great YouTube video. It's a guy giving a lecture, a guy who studied the Apollo computer. I'll we'll put that in the show notes and in the description. But it's amazing. It's phenomenal what they accomplished with the compute power available back then.
Yes.
It really is. And if you look at the way that they even built the hardware, the memory for the Apollo hardware was physically woven by these ladies that they would weave together, and it would be ones and zeros in the pattern that they were weaving these copper wires, and the entire program was woven by hand. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and you think that was only 30 years after when we were cutting our teeth as entry level in the IT field. Because I mean, I remember my tech school training still covered subject areas of iron core memory and bubble memory, and we were still in days of RAM. We were in the early days of RAM and everything. So yeah, I mean, the progression of technology is just mind blowing when you actually stop and think about it. And it's a never ending cycle, right? As I tell people I mentor, talk, that are starting into the field or kind of midway through their career type things, like the minute you think you know everything, you're comfortable with what you've been taught, you better retire or switch a career because IT and cyber, it's never ending. It's always learning something new. Always something coming down the pipeline,
Yeah,
which makes it interesting. This is kind of why I love it too. Keeps me engaged.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so I mean, really, your career progression just sort of naturally led into the audit and advisory space. I know that we met at A Line, but prior to that, you had I'm assuming you had gigs at some of the integrators and things like that.
It's funny. So, yeah. So when we met, I was the federal practice lead at Online. But before that, it was still my first job after I retired at Air Force. I was working for a company, uh, doing basically just a defense contractor or a federal government contractor, where I managed the government contracts that just happen to do the assessments and authorizations for various government agencies. Right. So
Oh,
that's kind
got
of
it.
why I fell into compliance, and I'd been doing that for 4 years before I made the move to Align, and go wholly into more the commercial aspect. Granted, attached to the public sector stuff I was doing, but no longer doing the actual government contracting, directly supporting the government agencies. So um,
Yeah.
it
What was that
was
shift like for you? That getting into assessments and the A&A side of things.
it
What was
was
that like?
interest it was interesting. I remember one of my first job interviews as I was retiring and looking for a job. They asked me, how do you document and gaps and findings and stuff like that. And I still hadn't, really internalized the term like POAM. And I was like, I explained, oh, you do this, this, and this. I'm like, oh yeah, you got it. I was waiting to hear you say POAM. I'm like, oh yeah, I probably should have said that, right? Um, but being the contractor, doing that after is where I really started delving into it. I mean, I was able luckily to adapt some of my military experience where I did not necessarily direct IT audits, but in the Air Force, you call it standards and evaluations and being mission capable. So we had the set standards and checklists and verification of individual skill sets to make sure they could actually do the job, or do they need to remain in training. I would do
Hmm.
participate in operational readiness inspections and staff assistance visits, which are military terms of like readiness and everything else. So it was always on the other side, but being able to participate, have that experience was able to allow me to adapt and actually run it from the outside. It's like, oh, this is why they asked me those questions. This is why they did this, and really just internalize and run through it all.
Yeah. Uh, I had similar feeling kind of when I got into the audit side of things, which really didn't happen for us. Gary and I actually met at Lowe's. We were both in the information security group within Lowe's corporate, and he had just come off of a stint, his second stint at Booz Allen, running large contracts in agencies, mostly on the Fed Civ side.
Mhm.
And that led to a lot of relationships that got us our first contracts when we started Infusion Points, and so I was supporting those at first and traveling a lot and that kind of thing. But I was still very much oriented as a builder, and helping to build things as part of these programs, right? So a lot of what we did was HSPD 12 work in Treasury, and
Yeah.
they were doing lax enablement for logical access, and I think that they had already done most of the physical access control for the buildings and stuff. But we were working through that, and you know, at some point, like we got an email from a CTO for Dell Federal, and he was like, "Hey, I want to build a FISMA private cloud and sell to agencies. Can y'all help with that?" And we were like, "Absolutely." We had already done the some FISMA work, or we were familiar with it. We had to
Yeah.
support it from the agency side, so we sort of got shoehorned into FISMA, which very quickly became FedRAMP. This was like 2011 timeframe, and then they turned that into one of the first JAB authorized FedRAMP uh, IaaS solutions in the marketplace. So it was interesting how we sort of got into the compliance side almost accidentally. We've always been more on the security engineering side of things, but the compliance side sort of they go hand in hand so much,
Yeah.
especially on the federal side of things.
Yeah. You can't have one without the other, especially in the federal and public sector side. So, I mean, my first job out of the Air Force, again, I was the program manager for running assessments and authorizations, or at the time, independent verification validation for Defense Health Agency for all medical systems for DoD. So I was running a team there where we did at first die cap, you know,
Hmm.
authorizations and everything else, and then as part of that, when we
RMF.
did do RMF, and just dealing with EMAS and dealing with the CCIs, which in Air Force military speak, the CCIs are the individual control objectives out of the 853, right? And doing all that and running the STIGs and validating the STIGs and creating the recommendations for ATOs and developing that whole efficient process to run through it. I was able to run a team where we did on average around 100, 150 ATO assessments for DHA a year with a team of 6 or 7 folks. We
Yeah.
were really, really busy, but cutting my teeth on that made FedRAMP like, oh, okay, it's just something more writ large and it's specific to cloud. And
You have to kind
yeah,
of adapt it.
yeah,
Yeah.
we adapted it because in the same company where I was doing that program, we stood up an advisory 3PL, and that's really where I started cutting my teeth back in 2014, 2015 on FedRAMP, and just took it away from there. And then, as you know, it was morphed into GovRAMP, and then getting into early stages around CMC and staying involved with all of that, and then learning
Right.
all the other agency-specific versions of RMF, IRS 1075, DHS 4300A, and
Sieges.
CGIST, and all the other things, and then even international, because, the Canadian
Hmm.
ITSP 33 is
Protected
based on
B.
53, yeah. And
Yeah.
then, IRAP and Australia and all that stuff. So they're all interrelated. So it's a wild ride, right? It's the nice
Yeah,
thing is
absolutely.
it's all centered
And, you
around
know,
the knowledge set, though.
yeah, and I was amazed at, I mean, one thing that sort of hit me pretty hard was, after we did the initial work with Dell, you know, I was like, this doesn't feel like I've heard everyone else talking about cloud.
Hmm.
This feels like we put some things together to do some auto provisioning, and it was cool. Um, but as that project, as we started getting more customers that were doing FedRAMP or needed FedRAMP on, but they were, working on AWS or Azure, the language totally shifted. Like, um, how to use the PaaS services and things like that. Like that hit us pretty hard, and we had to catch up really quickly
Yeah.
on that. And that was around the time that we partnered with AWS, um, to get our folks kind of up to speed on that side of the house. Because when you're advisors, you're working with engineers a lot, and engineers can be pretty darn demanding on, like, exactly what does this control mean in this environment? Like, come on. Um, and at some point we realized we're just too generic in the way we're approaching this, and we got to learn to speak the language of the engineers and the developers.
Yeah. Wholeheartedly agree. I mean, it's interesting because it's almost contradictory in purpose. So, like when we advise in cybersecurity, we obviously want our clients to leverage our complete knowledge set and skills, but adapt it to their specific needs, right? So we're not trying to do a cookie cutter thing. Obviously, there's going to be common answers and resolutions to the various problems that we encounter with them, but
Mhm.
the whole point, though, is to make sure it's tailored. So it's a realistic cybersecurity program that they've implemented that just happens to meet all their compliance requirements, right? That's the goal here. It's not the check the box of, I meet the bare minimum on this cybersecurity framework, but it has no bearing in reality to how we actually do and secure our systems, if we even secure our systems, right? So that's kind of what we advocate, and that's what we try to keep in mind is we own the objectives of our clients to say your really ultimate goal is to make sure this information is protected properly, and then the natural outcome of doing the proper protections and security engineering just happens to meet FedRAMP, CGIS, ISO, whatever it may be, and that's what that's what we concentrate on. And bring
Mhm.
in the little catchphrase I've always loved. We bring the clarity to the chaos, because it is chaos, right? There's all these various frameworks, especially between commercial and public sector. There's a lot of commonalities between two, but there's enough significant differences. Like one doesn't completely answer the same thing for another framework, right? That requires some thought and everything else. Um, so that's
Or
kind
the
of
scopes don't,
yeah,
like in the CMMC case, like the scopes don't always overlap, right? Like, how many
yeah.
times have you had to have that conversation?
Well, yes. God, I can't count the number of times. Like we're FedRAMP, so we don't need CMMC, right? It's like not quite. Um, Yeah, and that's the one of the things that we've always identified too. Like it's very rare the FedRAMP boundary is going to exactly match your CUI environment boundary. And if they're the case, you're one of the lucky few. Yeah, if you're FedRAMP authorized, you don't need CMC because really there's nothing for a C3PO to assess against for you to get a certification to begin with, right? I've had some of those conversations. Uh, but 9 times out of
Yeah.
10, it's not the case because there's always some other COI that's coming in, right? Like, oh, I forgot. There may be COI or FCI in our sales cycle, which is outside of our FedRAMP service, right? So, well, then that's
Well,
where the CMC applies.
and it seems to me like, and I've seen a bunch of instances of this lately where, a customer does all this due diligence to say, you know, hey, we don't have any CUI outside of our FedRAMP boundary, and then they get the flow down letter.
Yep. Yep.
The level 3, integrators that you're working with, or they don't care. Get CMMC. Yeah,
Yeah, and we kind of help them with that talk track too, because obviously, yeah, we've encountered that too. It's like we have to get CMC certified because our clients say we have to. All right, but there's nothing for you to get CMC certified against because your COI is within a federal IT
yeah,
system. How do we tackle it? Well, we're going to have to figure out talk track and have you talk to them because it's not a for the 90% of the time it is one size fits all, right? You need to get your CMC certified because it doesn't really match. But in those few cases it does, then it just becomes a headache for our clients, and that's kind of what we're here to try to help them through because like you said, practicality C3PO comes in, it's like, where's your CUI in that ATO system? Anywhere
yeah,
else? No, I got nothing to assess you against.
yeah.
So, but it's all those nitnoy things that kind of, to me, keep things interesting too, and being able to spread the word and educate, because that's really the majority of our job is to educate our clients to make sure that they're ready. Because as a consultant or an advisor, our job is to make sure we don't have a job later on, right? We provide that all that service and knowledge to our clients that they can take it over. If they happen to want our services for support and augmentation, that's great. Love that. Love to continue the relationship with them. But we're I guess that's one thing you know companies have to be wary of is there are companies out there that will try to nickel and dime you and kind of parcel out that information to keep the revenue flow going. And we give you as much information as you need. That's why we do the fixed prices and all that stuff and proper scoping. So we're not that type of company, and I know what Fusion Points isn't either. Um, so
No, yeah, we try to be very transparent with pricing, and it doesn't always go in our favor,
yeah,
because there are others that take advantage of that. They've got a really tiny fine print, um, that the customers, they're not always comparing apples to apples, unfortunately, and that's. But we try to. The biggest thing for us is our best customers want the relationship
yep,
long term, right? And they want something that's more enduring than a transactional. What's the better price? And we win quite often on that. So it's yeah,
yeah, we do
and
the
there's
same thing. And the funny thing is with CMMC, and to a lesser extent, I'd say even with FedRAMP. I mean, there are those out there that are very transactional, right? And
yeah,
but our value statement is the same as yours, right? We build that relationship. We want to integrate you as a trusted partner and be your first stop, whether it's something we can help with or not. If it's not, then we'll point you in the right direction or give you our best not guess, but advice on how best to proceed and everything else, and bring in other people in the network that we know are better or experts in it more than us. That you know whether it's more legal and ITAR compliance and or things of that nature, right? Like you and I, we could do ITAR compliance from the technical aspect all day long, but it comes into the
yeah.
actual compliance from the legal framework. Like I'm not a lawyer, and I don't even want to be a lawyer to do all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah, 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 yeah. I hear you there. Um, you know, you've worked with a ton of different companies, different providers. Where have you seen where companies like in their security program and their compliance program, um, where have you seen where they've kind of over-invested or over-engineered things? Is there any common patterns? And same thing with underinvestment.
I'm not sure there's a whole lot of, I guess you'd say, over investment, or I guess let me think about that. The over investment comes into where I've seen companies try to solve it by buying a capability and contracting with a third party service vendor, where they've tried to abrogate the responsibility or accountability so far out that, oh, I don't do that. I hired someone else to do that. Oh, I don't do that. I hired someone else to do that. And when you look at it, when they have to abide by or demonstrate their compliance with these things and show how they've implemented it, there's really nothing for them to do that. And the relationships they've set up and the SLAs and everything really don't meet all the specific needs, and they're just kind of stuck in a hole because they've overinvested in trying to bring someone, an outside party in, specifically around tool sets and everything else, or at least the wrong ones.
Mm,
I mean, you've seen it, especially around like CMMC. Someone is trying to hire a MSP or MSSP that says, we can do all your controls for you. Well, the minute you hear someone saying like, I can do all 110 controls and you don't have to worry a thing about it, you better run away and run away very fast. Um,
yeah.
because
I mean,
that's not true.
we've seen this play out entirely with like SOC 2 Type 2, right? Like these providers that promise, fast results, get on our GRC thing, and in 2 weeks you'll have your SOC 2 Type 2 certification, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I
I mean, I
mean,
don't know if you followed the delve.
yeah, we have, and
Yeah,
Jake, our founder and our chief growth officer, has submitted has published a couple papers around that on LinkedIn and everything, and it centers about going back to the basics of the stock reports were originally called trust reports, and the verification, the competency of the CPA firm that's signing off and stuff like that, and just really bringing it back to what is supposed to happen. I mean, there's room for technology and automation, but we can't promise or guarantee certain outputs. If someone's doing that, especially in the compliance and regulatory framework, to me, it's kind of a red flag, right?
yeah,
Because you never know what's going on. And then the whole point of those stock reports is the fact that it is supposed to be controls as implemented by that specific organization. So there shouldn't really be a lot of cookie cutter. There's going to be a lot major commonalities across the board, but that's why you bring in that stock auditor, is to attest to the specifics and uniqueness of each of those control implementations, which each of the clients, right? That's the whole point of it.
yeah,
I mean, to the same extent, like FedRAMP and CMC, it's a set control base, but how you implement that, even across similar technology architectures, the business operation aspect does make it unique and does put constraints on it where it's not necessarily cookie cutter. There is going to have to be some sort of uh, tailoring to it to make sure it fully addresses all the needs for an independent review.
yeah. I mean, there's a number of companies that have done what we've done, which is to come up with opinionated methods to solve for controls,
Yes.
right? And build automations and build platforms that support that. And then if customers want to come on platform, they can, they could benefit from that opinionated work that we've already
Yep.
done, that pre-engineering, and that works. And we've seen that work, really well for customers, especially if they're already managing a commercial environment and now they need to go regulated, and they need sort of a a different stamp, but to meet totally different controls, for that sovereign cloud environment or for that new regulated stamp. So it's like in those cases, it works really well.
It,
Um,
yeah, but I
yeah,
mean, I know you guys too, and you guys know what you're doing, but I
we do things. We actually do things.
you do
We
things,
don't.
but that too is you've identified things like, hey, we've written to what we are providing you, and this is a set known
Yep.
good value and how to do things, but you're
Yeah, we
not
have our own
guaranteeing that
CRM.
you're not going to guarantee 100% of like all the controls are going to be, or you've identified in those areas where there's shared controls. This is the part
Exactly.
that you have to fill in what you need to do based upon what we are doing on your behalf, right? So there's, again, it's that tailoring. It's the concern is where those companies that say we can do it all for you and you need minimal
Right.
input from you. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
very
You
leery about
you
that.
you have nothing to do. Right. Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
you can't say
there's
that
yeah,
because I mean, at the very least, the supply chain controls, right, that make up their application, the hardening of the application itself, because it just you can't get everyone using a hardened container image, like the identical
yeah,
hardened container image. And even if you did provide that, which we do, we offer a couple different
yeah.
hardening options and image options. um, your application might not work on it, right? Or you might need, like Alpine Linux or some other,
Yeah.
type of container image. So
Well, and that's the thing too. Is I guess you'd say like underinvestment that I've seen is typically around a standardized hardening of
yeah,
assets, as well as the governance side, the policies and procedures that kind of um, prevent the whole tribal knowledge of if someone gets hit by a bus or something like that. Do we do we know why and how to do the things that we've been doing? And the only way to do that is, unfortunately, through documentation of some sort, something that continuity book, run books, whatever you want to call it, policies, procedures, but something that kind of outlines this is how we do things in a consistent manner, despite what you know someone says here, or and that proper chain of if there are updates and improvements to that, then that's getting documented so that everyone knows what it is and how to do it properly in a consistent manner. Because in my opinion, a lot of these compliance frameworks, it's really about, are you doing what you say you do and keeping track of it through some sort of independent method so anyone can come in and learn and understand how you're doing things, right? And obviously doing it in a secure manner, or doing it, the controls are just the minimum thresholds of what you should be doing, not necessarily the top end of what you have to be doing. Um, and that's the key there, is that consistency across what you doing, the actual actions. Everyone understands what those actions are, and having a reference that outlines those actions, right? That consistency across everything, people, places, and technology.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the way I always answer this question is there's there's too much impetus on tool buying and not enough on integration, not
Yeah.
enough on making the stuff actually work. And it
Yeah.
kind of goes back. It goes back to the almost like the finance offices. Um, they put more importance on capital expense than on opex, right? Or they would rather be able to capitalize an investment and not have to hire people to operationalize it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, there's something to say is like you do, and this comes down to kind of what we talk about is cybersecurity is not just a technology aspect, right? We've kind of talked about that in the past. It's cross-cutting across various businesses, because it is. Let's be honest. We're doing this. Everyone's doing this to run a business and make profit, right? I mean, it's a business.
mhm.
Um, so that always plays a factor of like, what is the return on investment? What do we need to do versus what we should be doing versus what we can afford, with all those aspects, right? We all run businesses. It's all at forefront, or at least we're successful business. Then the numbers and everything are at the forefront, but it's also of equal importance is, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing, right? The ethical and legal requirements that we're supposed to follow.
Yep.
And it's
The due
it's a
care
hard,
and due
yeah,
diligence.
yeah, it's a hard road to follow sometimes, and there's a lot of ambiguity around it, especially now, like we going back to talk about engineers, they want specifics. Well, cybersecurity is not always about specifics, right? Or at least the frameworks aren't always about specifics, because there's always those one-off or squirrel cases, is what I used to call them, right? And it's like, well, you get into the what if with the engineers, like, well, this control, well, what about this, and what if this? Like, let's do best effort. What meets the normal things? If there's these weird things that are likely or happen on a regular basis, we need to address that. But if it's what happens
Yeah,
if a
what's
meteor hits the data center? No, we're not really going to address that in a specific manner.
right. Yeah, I mean, at some case, it all boils down to people have to people have to be in place to make a judgment,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, when all bets are off and the procedure doesn't account for it.
I guess in the military, we always like, you always want to present three courses of action, and one is if you do nothing, so you understand what the true operational cost is. What's the minimum viable thing that we need to do, and what's the recommended approach, right? So, I mean, that's kind of how I approach our consulting too. Is like, if you do nothing, here are your risks, here's the impacts. Here's the bare minimum, but it's not something we necessarily recommend, because here's risks and things that could happen, and here's what we see and understand to be the best approach for you, and let them make such judgment call. And because again, there's those business considerations that people have to consider when you implement things because things cost money. Uh, but we help them through along the way, and then if what we presented isn't quite right to them, then we work with them to adapt it to their specific needs. I mean, it's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of the goal, we want good security for all our clients and for the and it's the public sector for the government too to protect the data.
Yep. Um, so a lot's changing the last couple of years, right? Or what, year and a half? Um,
Yep.
a lot it's funny because last year the big focal, the big focus for us was the all the change going on in the FedRAMP PMO, 20X coming out, things like that. This year, so hair was on fire over that. But this year it's almost seeing what is going on with the rapid advances in AI, and what's possible and what's likely to be possible even as we speak in coming weeks and months.
Hmm.
Um, hearing about like mythos and capabilities that Anthropic has, right? Right
Yep.
as the DoD is like going toe to toe with them, um, or DOW, I should say. Um, I don't know. What stands out to you? Like what's your experience been?
AI is the buzzword, right? Like, and how do we implement it through everything and doing everything? I mean, I see it there on my feeds and everything else and discussions and all the conferences. I mean, I think AI is here to stay. I think it is progressing quickly and rapidly, but I think that's just a normal outgrowth of technology, right? Think of how long it took us to get from the Model T forward to the 60s, and then look at advances from the 60s to the 80s and 80s to today. Just the sheer speed of advancement of each evolutionary stage of a technology. That's what we're seeing is that shorter and shorter development time between each new thing in IT, and AI is the thing. Now,
I mean, does this feel like something on the level of like cloud computing or web? Because to me,
there,
it feels different. It feels. At first, I was like, this is just the next iteration of the next thing
I
that we'll
think it's,
focus on for the.
yeah, I mean, I think AI is one of those things that is more complementary to the IT things that we're dealing with because
Well, it's got
AI,
broad applications beyond IT, but
right?
it's
It
it's being
does.
explored more in IT first.
Yes. And the thing there is, it doesn't revolutionarily change how we do cloud operations. It's the speed at which we do cloud operations, right? And that's kind of where I say it's not, it's almost a side branch as just what we currently understand IT technology to be is to work hand in hand with it or parallel to it because it's, forgive my military, but it's more of a supporting than a
Mm.
primary technology aspect, right? Because it increases the efficiency and how fast we can do things and how well we can do things
But it's the
of
current
other stuff,
things.
right? But it's the kind of things, right? Because
Yeah,
AI for the sake of AI, what's there
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
a whole lot to it. Now, I do worry about and my like my daughter is doing graphic design, going to college for graphic design. So like as I
Mm.
mentioned AI just sets them off because everyone tries to do that. Well, you've seen it on like LinkedIn, all the AI generated artwork, which is antithesis to them as a graphic design artist and everything else, which I get, right? Um,
Caitlin might have some choice words on
and,
it.
and those are the things too, is that we have to be wary of. There has to be a balance to the tool. Now, everyone talks about agentic AI and generative AI and all that stuff, where can and should these things operate without human intervention and human review? And that is a concern, right? Because the other aspect too is there has to be room for people to cut their teeth on technology, because otherwise we have a whole generation of IT professionals that don't even know the basics
Hmm.
because AI did it all for them. So then how do they learn the basics to be the experts at the senior levels that you need where AI is of more and more limited help unless AI becomes the expert. And then we run into those dystopian future sci-fi worlds where we got Terminator and the AI runs everything, the human race is enslaved and all that stuff. But there has to be, and I will always advocate that there has to be a balance to it, right?
Yeah.
AI is very
Or
helpful.
Wally. I think Wally is my favorite one.
Yeah. But um, but then too, it also limits our avenue because if you don't have the people learning the basics around this stuff, then where does the innovation come from? Because a lot of innovation is
That's
derived from having that strong depth of foundation, right? And if you don't have that, you have a very thin layer because a lot of it has been done for you by AI. You rely on an AI to do this, but then where do the new ideas come from? Where does that next revolutionary thing come from we're all if we're all conditioned around what AI tells us, right? It's
right.
supplement. We're getting very philosophical. I'm not saying like AI is the end of the world or down with AI, but it's just
No,
more like,
no, I'm with you. I have the same, the same thought process going on about, how rapidly it's advancing and how there's no, you know, it's not that there's no stopping it, right? It's like, why would you want to stop it? We really can't stop it for a number of reasons. But I mean, I've got, you know, I'll, in June I'll have 4 teenagers.
oh,
So,
jeez.
one of them's 19 and, he's looking at his career. Everyone's kind of trying to figure out what they're interested in.
Yeah.
And, it's a big part of the conversation, because we don't know how jobs are gonna look in 5 years. We don't know how much this is gonna change things or even 2 years.
Well, I mean, we've seen the huge
Um,
impact to the IT industry. I mean, look at all the
yep.
tens of thousands of layoffs, and you know, reading the
But
stories and
you're
backgrounds. A lot of it is related to the implementation of AI and saving on man hours because AI can do it faster. Now, I would say leave it up to debate. Can they do it better? But
and I wonder what balance of that is investment in AI, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of these layoffs are to actually free up capital to buy chips and data centers and cooling towers and all the energy infrastructure and that kind of stuff. So there's that aspect because that's almost they're seen as like the future workers, right? So they're
Yeah.
investing in like the AI workforce instead of the human workforce. But I do get very concerned about the number of junior and dev roles that are being eliminated. Um, especially we're seeing it really first in software engineering and I mean, AI for me moved kind of beyond a buzzword when I'm starting to watch podcasts where the creators of like Claude Code hasn't written any code since September of last year. He supervises, um, and
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. And it's like I'm not discounting the need or what AI can do for us, but you kind of mentioned like he hasn't coded since September, but he has that strong foundation to be able to
Yeah,
supervise and evaluate the code generated. And that goes back to our earlier discussion and concern is how will the next generation develop that level of expertise to monitor and oversee the code generation by AI?
or to even take it to the next level.
Right.
Like who's going to be thinking about what's next and innovating on what's next if they haven't built up to that level. Now, like right now, we have people to do that because they they built that like we did. They had to go through our experience,
Yeah.
uh, to to know what we know today. But future generations aren't necessarily going to have that. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
It is because I kind of equate it from, and this is showing our age, I guess, is, think about, I came in the Air Force as a programmer. You did software development too, and I know that is think about the whole COBOL thing, right? Like you
Yeah.
have in the commercial world all these legacy COBOL systems that a lot of people probably don't realize it's still in use today. But
Yep.
COBOL is no longer taught in school. There's no so like your
And
experts
the
in
average
COBOL
age of
learn.
a Cobalt developers, like,
Yeah,
probably in their late 50s or 60s.
and those are the ones that kind of did it on their own or got into the job and learned it, but never through formal training, right? Because like I said, you and I, school in the 90s, COBOL still wasn't taught then. I mean, it was still taught in the Air Force because Air Force is way behind and
I
the
I did have
technology
a
wasn't, but
Fortran class.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, and the only reason I bring this up is because I saw an article last week about the COBOL system that HHS uses for their HR systems is finally being decommissioned as of like this year,
Wow.
right? I remember back in the mid 90s when I was stationed in Omaha, Nebraska, where Campbell Foods was headquartered at. And there was a huge need for COBOL programmers for Campbell Foods and like Mutual of Omaha Insurance because even in the 90s, all their systems were still written in legacy COBOL on mainframe. So if you had mainframe experience and
Yep.
and
At Lowe's,
COBOL
Lowe's was the
knowledge,
same way. Lowe's, we had mainframe. CA2 was something that they hired for a lot.
yeah,
I think that was that um, it might have been CA Technologies that had that product. That was the like the access control piece
yep,
of
yep.
CA. But that was a big skill set. COBOL was a big skill set, and then in all the Lowe's stores there was a pair of AS400s that ran all the store operations for many years.
We're really showing our age
So
now. People are going to tune out of this podcast. Like, I don't need to know about this old ancient technology. But
this was
yeah,
in the early 2000s. I mean, it wasn't that long ago,
it's
but
still ancient though, man. I mean, think about it. Early
it is.
2000s,
Well,
still
it was
20.
ancient then.
Yeah, it was ancient then, and it's even more ancient now. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I
Yep.
mean, and that just kind of speaks to the fact of how fast things have progressed, especially with AI, and it's just going to get faster.
Yeah.
The thing is like it's something we need to learn, but I think it's also incumbent upon those of us in the business now to make sure that we're still bringing up the next generation, give them the foundation they're going to need to succeed once they're in our spots too. And that's, to me, that's more of something I've always loved doing in the industry too, is mentoring. And that's kind of what we
Yep.
need to provide as well.
Yeah. It's disappointing seeing these stories about startups with 5 people, and they're trying not to expand or contribute to that, because we all have to take responsibility for building the next workforce. I mean, that's a huge part of what we do that's made us successful here in North Carolina is working with App State University and the local community college to curate talent, and curate the curriculum that's going to create that talent.
Yeah.
It's a big part of our investment here in the region and area, and then we put our money where our mouth is and hire those people. Um, we've even developed we're on like I think our third year of intern cohorts. So
Oh, okay.
we'll bring on like 4 or 5 interns together in a group, and they work together to solve problems. They get um, exposure to kind of all parts of the organization, and out of that batch, we typically hire sometimes all of them, but usually at least 50% of them.
Yeah. I
So
mean, we're doing internship programs and we're participating like Hire Our Heroes and stuff like that. Try to get those people in there and start training them as well. We're committed to that. It's just, it's difficult sometimes, especially, like, well, again, the business aspects, like how do you balance that against the work and everything else? And we're making that commitment as well. But yeah, I mean, we have to think about the future of the industry and where we're going to get those experts.
yeah,
But I mean,
do
don't
your
get me wrong.
part.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love AI. I mean,
Yeah,
it. We just need to be with any new technology, be careful on how it's used, right? And
yeah,
not so much from a nefarious thing, but just so we don't get dumber and lose the skills that we've developed and needed. That it's making it easier for us to do. Um,
yep,
you know, uh, yeah. I mean, that's
yeah,
really what it
absolutely.
is.
All right, so maybe we can have some lighter hearted
Yeah.
segment here. Um, is there like any book that you've read lately that's really been interesting to you?
uh, I'll be
Do you
honest.
read?
I love to read, but I don't read professional books. I guess that's kind of bad of me. I
Not
read
really.
fiction. I read, like sci-fi, fantasy, of course, and um, the a guilty pleasure. I guess nowadays in the U.S. they call it lit RPG. These like
Oh,
homegrown stories stuff. They're all based in Chinese, Korean, Japanese. They call them cultivation type things. Just like it's the literary version of old school kung fu movies, I guess you'd say, is a guilty pleasure every once in a while too. But
cool.
no, most of
Yeah.
my stuff is honestly just reading, reading and keeping up with what's going on through news and everything else. I'm
Yeah.
sad life. I'm one of those few people. I'm one of those guys that so love the industry and have an interest in it. I don't really consider reading LinkedIn and things that are going on there as work or anything else. It's actually enjoyable to keep learning about AI and what the newest capabilities from the
Yeah.
hyperscale,
That's how it is for
and
me.
all that stuff. It's just there's so much reading there. I don't really have time to do any reading. And frankly, it doesn't bother me because it's all interesting to me.
Yeah. And my brain anymore, it's difficult for me to focus, like to sit down and focus and read a book for a solid 12 hours. Number one, I just I never have that kind of time, with being a dad of soon to be four teenagers. Um, but I mean, and I'm a little bit sad about it because there are I think some good nuggets out there in books that I would like to get to. I do try to kind of get quick summaries
Yes.
of certain books. I know that we have a kind of a reading group here at Infusion Points that does a book every month, and I'm like, I'm not part of this again this month. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. I mean,
But
yeah. I mean, I am a voracious reader, at least I used to be, and I loved it. So like I was even the kind of geek that would try to read at least one or two books off the Air Force Chief of Staff's reading list type stuff when I was in active duty and stuff like that. But the yeah, the past probably 6, 7 years, I have not done any of that type of reading.
yeah,
But honestly,
uh,
I miss it. It's like I'm still doing a lot of reading, just not around that sort of stuff. I think the last good book that I really loved reading that was something of that nature was Colin Powell's book when he wrote
oh,
that.
okay,
And the reason why is just more of he's probably one of the greatest people I've ever met. Um, I remember every once in a while he would come out to the Pentagon and sit in the AFE store where you bought the uniform items, stuff like that. And he would just set up a table and have his books there, and he would sign and then chat with people every once in a while. And it would
that's cool.
you'd have the people lined around the Pentagon waiting to meet him, and he's the most down to earth, friendly person as a 4-star general, former Secretary of State. I mean, it was great. It was great.
Oh,
So
that's
that was
awesome.
probably the last book that was probably the last book I read of
Gotcha.
that nature.
What about any like favorite TV shows or anything?
My wife and I love watching The Rookie. So we're big,
Oh,
geeks and stuff. So Nathan Fillion with the whole Serenity and Firefly and all that stuff. In fact, we go to uh, in DC, we live in Northern Virginia area. So we go to DC, they have what's called Awesome Con, which is kind of like the local version of Comic Con, stuff like that. And
gotcha.
just about the entire Firefly cast was there. So we got photos with the whole family with them. We got autographs from them.
Nice.
My wife
That's
and I
cool.
cosplayed as various characters. I mean, so that's the type of stuff we do instead of reading. We're just I have a family. My kids didn't stand a chance with my wife
Geeks.
and I being very much old school geeks.
Nothing wrong with that at
I mean,
all.
as you can see from my
Um,
background with the Legos. So
yeah, man, I need to go find my old Transformers. Is that a Gen 1 Optimus Prime back there?
no, that's the Lego set. So that's
Oh,
Soundwave, Bumblebee, and Optimus Prime Lego sets, and then my various mm, Iron Man Lego sets too, because I love Iron Man. But
yeah.
yeah, those are all Legos, but they do transform for the Transformer ones.
So if you weren't in cybersecurity, like what would you be doing?
Yeah, what would I be doing?
You probably can't imagine that.
No, it's funny. So when I retired, the Pentagon, it's a funny anecdote story. I did the transition assistance program, and the Pentagon has a very good program for that. And one of the things that I did was they did a job inventory where they asked you like a set of like 300 questions, and then at the end of it, they compile the answers and give you your top ten professions that you probably enjoy based on your interest in inventory, right? The funny thing was, I did this as I was retiring after 22 years in the Air Force, and the top 10 jobs were all IT related: computer programmer, system designer, network administrator, database administrator, and then that was nine of them. And then the 10th one was a military officer. I was like, well, crap.
Wait, I'm retiring.
I retired, so that's out. So the other nine is IT, cyber. Okay, that makes sense.
So
So
you're not getting out of this alive. It
no,
sounds like.
like I said, it's one of those things. Like I do love the profession. Obviously, there's always aspects you don't like, but you take the good
Yeah,
with the bad. But you know, overwhelming majority is I enjoy it and love it. Like I told you
I
about.
think the best.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say I think the best part is the people you meet, right?
Yes.
I mean, a close second would be the missions that are accomplished.
Yeah.
The feeling that you get from watching your team succeed, watching your customers
Yeah.
succeed and get to their
Yep.
goals.
And that's the thing too. Is one of the perks that I like is mentoring. People in a company that are growing up and what's their next step professionally, or even just helping people that I in my network and stuff like that. And I do that as well. But you kind of mentioned like, what would I do if I wouldn't be doing this? Honestly, it's more probably like given our age where I'm looking to retire in probably the next 10 years. As my wife says, like, you're not fully retiring, you're going to be doing something because I'll kill you if you stay around the house that much. Um, so, and understandably so, I'd probably intentionally drive her up the wall. That'd probably be my job if I didn't have something else to do. But I've looked at like taking that whole workforce development and go teach at a local community college or something, teach them 101,
Oh,
200 level around cyber, just leverage the experience and knowledge that I have, or, on the other side of become some sort of, social media influencer and building Legos on YouTube for people.
yeah, awesome. Well, that sounds like a great place to um, conclude this episode.
Yeah.
Tony, I really appreciate you joining us, and until next time.
Well, thank you for having me. It was always great to talk with you and Gary and the rest of the team over there. Thank you for not getting me on my soapbox on some of the stuff.
We kept you off your soapbox.
Oh, that's a good or bad thing. Probably a good thing overall, but
Cheers.
cheers. Thanks.